afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start my talk on strategy and risk management, I want to assure y'all that I'm going to protect your lunch. Okay. So today we're going to talk about strategy and how to increase. The ultimate purpose of strategic management is to enable companies to create long-term sustainable value, which requires effective risk management. Over the past 2 decades, enterprise risk management is being seen as one of the important responsibilities of today's CFO. The ERM itself has undergone significant evolution in its development and uses. Many valuable lessons have been learned about its beliefs, objectives, and role in the organization. Today's CFO is required to integrate risk management in setting strategies and driving performance. Let's see what are the tangible steps that a CFO can take to develop an effective risk management program for the organization, and how does he go about doing that? The CFO is required to start with a strategic risk assessment process, which aligns risk assessment with the key strategies of the company. The CFO understands the strategy of the organization. He gathers data and views of strategic risks. He then comes up with a preliminary strategic risk profile. He validates and finalizes the risk profile, and then he develops the enterprise risk management and action plans. He communicates the strategic risk profile to directors, to the management, to line function executives, and then he implements the enterprise risk management action plans. Since business is being operated in a constantly changing environment, assessment of risk profile requires ongoing monitoring, and one would need to identify and assess the substantial changes and accordingly revise strategies and risk profile as appropriate. As all of you are aware, there are a multitude of risks such as geopolitical, operational, credit, financial, liquidity, and regulatory risks. CFO would need to identify a manageable number of key risks rather than try to address the laundry list of risks. He needs to prioritize based on the relation to the key strategies of the organization. In today's environment, the CFO is required to think the unthinkable, because we're living in such an environment, or we're trying to operate the business in an absolutely VUCA world where everything is constantly changing, and it's absolutely a volatile environment where things are uncertain. Nobody has a clue of what the interest rates are going to be in the future. Nobody has a clue of how the foreign exchange currencies are going to move. So under these circumstances, it's very, very imperative for the CFOs to think the unthinkable. And that is because it is the extreme risk events that occur more frequently than any model has predicted. CFO and boards are required to think of the impacts that the extreme risk events could have on the business, like that of the pandemic. In the process of risk management, the CFO is required to identify black swan events. The strategic planning group also considers the possible impacts that these black swan events could have on the organization's long-term strategic plans. Finally, the risks, the possible impacts on the organizational strategies, and the related risk management actions are discussed with the board. It would be worthwhile for the CFO to rethink their strategies in response to the pandemic and integrate the ERM process with strategic plan, assess and manage the new risks that will result from the new strategies. ERM is not a standalone staff function, but it's a process that must be integrated into the company's budgeting, planning, and performance measurement process. Let's now talk about the challenges in digitizing finance while elevating risk, because that's one of the topics that I'm required to cover in this talk. So, what is digital transformation in finance? Digital transformation is reorganizing and reshaping the finance and the accounting function using technology to create efficient operating systems and processes without necessarily replacing your legacy system, which could be the ERP that you all are working on. In today's world, digitally led financial transformation is essential for all business enterprises. However, let me tell you all that there are a number of challenges in bringing about the transformation that is led through digital technology. The first challenge, according to me, is legacy systems. Shift from legacy to new technological infrastructure and digital expertise requires huge amount of investments in transition costs. Unfortunately, small and medium enterprises cannot afford those costs at this point of time. Second, security and compliance. High security risk due to voluminous data and transaction records, which makes it harder to execute change while meeting compliance requirements. Customer expectation on user experience. The very purpose of digital transformation is to offer the customers improved efficiency and consistent user experience across platforms. Traditional banks and enterprises have found it hard to achieve because of extensive time, research, strategy, and marketing to offer the right choices to the customers. Workplace culture and reskilling workforce. Now, changes in the workforce and the workplace culture are significant as talent model switches and focuses on data scientists and analysts, thereby mandating the upskilling among employees. Efforts here require time, strategy, clear objectives, and communication. Overcoming these challenges in the initial stages of digital transformation opens the gateway to stabilize and secure an enterprise position in the market. Now, I'm going to move to the next topic, which is, let's talk about the importance of tools to identify, analyze, and mitigate uncertainty in the investment decisions. CFOs are required to be more strategic and agile in the current economic environment. Expanding the focus of planning beyond the P&L. So, the CFOs are always concerned about the P&L, but they're required to move beyond the P&L to cash. And capital planning can help the CFOs to better understand the cash flow drivers and ensure resiliency through uncertainty. Navigating such volatility requires collective efforts across Treasury, FP&A, and business partners to develop cash forecasts that are aligned with the strategies and operational improvements. From liquidity management perspective, Treasury function should collaborate with the banking partners to develop informed short and long-term strategies to manage cash, investments, and foreign currency exposures. Treasury should work closely with finance to review debt parameters and covenant calculations, as well as to understand planned capital projects and strategic initiatives. Finance should partner with business to develop financial plans that are aligned with the business strategies that are flexible to adapt to market volatility. Working capital analytics can provide visibility into trends impacting receivables, payables, and inventory to drive actionable insights to improving working capital and cash conversion by focusing on key drivers. Scenario planning can be a valuable tool in navigating uncertainty, mitigating potential financial risks, and optimizing cash management. The scenario model should not be complex. It should use only a few key variables which are related to macroeconomic environments such as interest rates, company-specific drivers. Successful scenario planning is always linked to defined outcomes such as seeking or reducing external financing or driving cost reduction initiatives which impact fixed or variable costs. Analyzing and comparing different cash flow scenarios allows a CFO to make more informed investment and strategic financial decisions. Stress testing on what-if scenarios may also provide a view on best-case, worst-case scenarios, enabling organizations to adapt quickly to the changing market conditions. This scenario-driven approach may be used to test various economic assumptions on the business or an investment portfolio. Beginning with a baseline forecast for the most likely outcome, stress testing involves running multiple simulations for alternative scenarios to develop a probability distribution of economic outcomes. Such analysis can be used to support capital planning, evaluating the impacts on the cost of capital and which investment should be reduced based on specific increase in interest rates. Such analysis can enable a more agile planning process when coupled with dynamic financial model to support strategic funding and investment decision in addition to managing short-term credit and long-term credit. Now I'm moving to the last subtopic, which is choosing the right fraud detection and prevention system. I think it's more important to focus on fraud prevention measures rather than fraud detection measures because you don't want frauds happening in the organization. So the first thing that one can do is to update the fraud awareness training. Organizations need to revamp the fraud training in order to teach employees how to identify fraud threats and promptly report suspect activity even when operating remotely. Enhanced fraud risk assessment. New hybrid and remote work arrangements means new procedures. Internal controls may not have kept pace with these work models, which increases the fraud risk. Companies need to update the fraud risk assessments to evaluate the new environment. Cyber-enabled fraud risks like ransomware, business email compromise, and account takeovers were all increasing even before the pandemic, and the remote work models have significantly expanded companies' cyber exposure. Strong anti-fraud technology and good cyber hygiene, like requiring effective passwords with multi-factor authentication, implementing regular backups, recovery process, and maintaining antivirus and patching protocols can help. When it comes to fraud prevention and fraud detection, we go back to the basics. There is no silver bullet to stop frauds, but there are certain helpful practices. The 5 pillars that are provided in the COSO fraud risk management guidance are strong governance, continuous risk assessment, controls, investigation, monitoring fraud risk. Here are some of the few steps for detecting and preventing fraud risk. Have a strong anti-fraud leadership and governance in place so that everyone knows what their roles are. Conduct effective risk assessment to understand the nature of fraud risk and the effectiveness of the mitigation techniques. Use strong controls to prevent and detect frauds. Ensure use of proper investigation and remediation techniques when those controls fail. Regularly monitor and report on your anti-fraud program performance and adapt to the changing fraud.